Welcome into the Sports Shuffle. It is November 4th. I am flying Ryan Gilchrist, who just discovered something about a dynasty league I'm in, along with
Tampa Motor Mouth Joel Verlin, who is just wondering if I'll have a slightly better fantasy week this week.
yeah. Oh man. So we're going to talk about last night's game where the Eagles do get the win, but not in the way you necessarily think they were going
Because
to.
it was when the halftime, because if you were just
14
sort of
all at half.
glancing, you were like row 14 all. And luckily, the Texans showed that they're still the Texans in the second half.
For fantasy purposes, probably a good thing the Eagles had to play into the second half, because if not, you were going to be very disappointed with the Hurts AJ Brown first half that they had. Dallas Goddard came on in the second half, so
Oh, Dallas Goddard was definitely the MVP, clearly, of the game, though Jalen Hurts did have a good game. Though, quite surprisingly, A.J. Brown, not what you would call a bad start.
no, AJ Brown was he was okay. Miles Sanders did have a good game as well for the Eagles, 15.3 in all leagues, so he didn't catch a pass. Hurts got around 20. AJ Brown, depending on your leagues, is going to be in that 12 to 15 or so range. Did get a touchdown. Yeah, Dallas Goddard's just very, very good at football. One of the best tight ends in the league. So the Eagles win this one 29-17. They don't cover the massive 14-point spread, but it was 14-14 at halftime. Damian Pierce, very good for the Houston Texans.
Somebody ought to
139
be.
rushing yards on 27 attempts. He was very good. It would have been even better for fantasy if he gotten into the end zone. But he didn't. Still had a solid night. No receptions, though. And the Eagles defense, 8 points. Not too bad. A couple picks, couple sacks really helped things out later. But it looked bad for a while. Those Eagles
I wouldn't call
not
them
looking great.
because I saw there was a tweet before the game that saying that the Eagles were going to be in RB1 territory. Might have overstated things, but still, when you compare to what some defenses, cough, Pittsburgh Steelers -1, put up the previous week, 8 points, not too shabby.
Yeah, not too bad. And we'll get into the injuries here in a little bit. But I think
Plague
there's
injuries.
a little bit of concern around the Eagles after that game. Maybe it's just an off night, whatever it was. But to struggle against the Texans, they beat the Cowboys with Cooper Rush. They've beaten the Jaguars and the Commanders. Nothing special there. They beat the Lions. They've beaten some really sorry teams in their stretch. They've only beaten the Vikings, who of note, and they beat them on Monday night, so you get primetime Kirk Cousins. So we'll see what the Eagles are. They have a difficult-ish stretch coming up where they get the Titans, and I believe it was the Titans, the Packers, the Bears. Can't remember the other team that was in there. The Giants. That was pretty solid, back to back. Could throw a wrench in their season, but 8-0. Texans fall to 1-6-1. They are right now in control of their own destiny for that number one overall pick.
Yeah, and Commander's sales kind of become definitely interesting, as apparently Jeff Bezos and Jay-Z are apparently partnering up to put in a bid for the team.
Of course they are. Because why wouldn't they just team up to go and buy an NFL franchise? That is just an absolute dumpster fire. Let's go ahead. Let's look into some of the news and notes and injuries and all the fun stuff from today. Let's start with your list of players out for Sunday. It's Jordan Poyer on the defense for the Buffalo Bills. Corey Davis, the wide receiver for the Jets, also out. Chidobe Awuzie is out for the
Yeah,
Cardinals.
that was the name I was having problems with. That's what lets them.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm not even going to try.
Yeah, no Jamar Chase, no Devontae Parker, no Johan Dotson, no Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen, no Russell Gage, and no Marquise Goodwin, all at the wide receiver position. A very short list for the running backs already ruled out that aren't on IR. It is Jonathan Taylor, so a big name, the number one consensus overall first pick. Oh, he's been a real problem. If you've got him in Dynasty, you've got him in redraft. It has not been great. The good news, if you have him in Dynasty, is it's just a minor ankle injury. It's not like an ACL or something that's chronic. You know, back-to-back ankle injuries can happen. But in redraft, you've already lost almost half a season with the guy. he's starting to become a burden on your roster. But you can't really trade him, you can't really keep him, you can't really play him. It's just a real tough situation all around. Yeah, no Marquise Goodwin as mentioned. Demarcus Robinson came down with a groin injury today. This is a team that already lost Rashad Bateman for the season. DeAndre Carter for the Chargers, also not a given to play. So Josh Palmer looks like the only healthy wide receiver as of this moment. DeAndre Carter is going to be questionable going forward with an illness.
Yeah, no.
Illness is going through some camps again.
Darren Waller is questionable for Sunday. McDaniels on Waller, quote, he's working extremely hard to get back as soon as he can. I know that. Nobody wants to play quicker than Darren does.
Yeah, hopefully he comes back for those of us who have had him and not had him for a little while now. Austin Eckler, abdomen injury, will play on Sunday. So good news for anybody who has Austin Eckler, along with Joshua Palmer, who will play as before mentioned, probably right now the only wide receiver, Gerald Everett, also a very good option for them as well. Josh Reynolds for the Lions, the wide receiver is doubtful. So no T.J. Hawkinson from the trade, then no Josh Reynolds. So you're looking at your Khalif Raymond, you're looking at your Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you might have some hope there. Ryan Tannehill officially questionable for Sunday's game against the Chiefs. Derrick Henry, though, did return to practice. I think it was rest from all the work, and he's going to just have to be, if Tannehill doesn't play, he's going to have to be the hammer again against the Chiefs to try and shorten that game and really dominate on the ground. Kadarius Toney not on the injury report. It seems like his hamstring injury was more of a Giants don't like me problem, but he is good to go. For the Cardinals defense, this is going to be big for your DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett shares. Budda Baker, game time decision for the Cardinals. That goes with James Conner, who will also be
I
a
also
game
saw
time decision.
another big name from last year carrying over this year. Chuba Hubbard
Yeah.
out for a few
Chuba Hubbard
weeks.
will be out, so Deontay Foreman should have a good opportunity. I don't think he's going to have as much success as he was last week against Cincinnati, but Nick Chubb looked pretty good. Cooper Kupp will play with that ankle injury. Not a big surprise there, but not sure about Kyron Williams. Cam Akers not on the injury report for any reason. He was out for personal reasons. There was the trade drama, and now it looks like he is back in the fold for
Well,
the
will
Bills
he be
defense.
playing in the Disappointment Bowl?
Yeah, Rams in Tampa. Not going to be a week for running backs no matter what for the Rams because of the matchup. Let's see. Von Miller has no injury designation, but he was injured early in the week. He will be good to go for the Bills. That's a big one. Let's see. Who else do we have? That may be the bulk of it. Philip Lindsay likely coming up from the practice squad. Deion Jackson will be the starter with Jonathan Taylor out. Colts aren't sure yet if Zach Moss is ready to make a contribution, so don't worry about him. Alan Lazard and Christian Watson are considered game time decisions, even though they've been back at practice this week. Could be a big Romeo Dubs week.
Right. Are you ready for the 3 or 4 buy or sells?
Yeah, that looks to be the list of injuries. So let's move ahead to whatever Joel's got planned. We
Right.
don't rehearse these either.
First one is to buy low. Are you buying low right now on James Robinson?
No, I don't think James Robinson is the answer to what happened with Breece Hall. I think Michael Carter is the younger, more talented player. He's got a lot more juice. Remember, James Robinson coming off the Achilles injury. That Achilles injury seems to be career ending almost. You might come back and play, but you've seen it with a lot of players. They just are not the same. We thought early on the season James Robinson was going to be the exception, and then he pretty much fell apart. So, no, I don't think James Robinson's on the radar here.
Right. What about buying Devontae Adams?
Oh, absolutely. Devontae Adams and the entire Raiders team looked so bad last week. There might be people frustrated, ready to sell, but there was a bad illness going through the team. It didn't look like anything was going well for the Raiders last week into this week. But Devontae Adams has been a very good wide receiver all season long. It's not a big risk long term that he had a bad week. Wide receivers are wildly inconsistent a lot of the times. You will have great wide receivers come up and put up 4 or 5 point weeks. Last week was one of those Very bad weeks for Devontae Adams. If you can get him without breaking the bank, don't go and give up a Tyreek Hill or anything like that. But if you can go and get Michael Pittman and a depth piece and go get him, then maybe, yeah, I think that's a good move.
All right. Last, before I go to the one possible sell, last buy low, Devonta Smith, who has one of the easiest remaining schedules for wide receivers. He is a dual threat. Do you buy low for Mr. Smith?
I think this one really depends on what you've got. Um, Goddard, Miles Sanders, and AJ Brown seem to be the big weapons on that team. Of course, Jalen Hurts can run the ball, so I would say you need to have a real need. I don't know what you're going to go after him to replace. So if you have starters of that Michael Pittman, normally have like a Mike Williams type in that same range. That's what that equates to. It's kind of a tough one because it's really team dependent. If you have good wide receivers, you're probably not looking at it. If you have below average or average, you are probably going to kick that one around. So team dependent. Most of my teams, I would say, probably not a target of mine, but I also try and tend to build a little more balance than others.
All right. The one and only sell for all four candidates. Name definitely synonymous with disappointment this year, Kyle Pitts.
I think this is a good buy time. I really do. People want to sell Kyle Pitts. He's been more involved lately. He did get the touchdown last week. I think with Cordero Patterson coming back, it's going to open up some things sooner rather than later. And frankly, his price is so low. If you sell him, you're not going to get fair value back. So maybe in Dynasty, he is a sell candidate, but in redrafts, I think this could be an interesting time to buy. You could be getting someone with massive upside. In Dynasty, I think you want to hold. He is a second-year tight end. He was supposed to be the next great tight end coming out of college, and we'll see if that does come to fruition. But I think he's actually an interesting buy candidate, especially if you can get him in a Dynasty league where he's got his whole career ahead of him.
All right, and those are my four candidates for buy or sell for this edition of the Sports Shuffle.
Yeah, Kyle Pitts has just been very weird. And I think it's because of Marcus Mariota being a running team, running quarterback, running head coach style. It's just tough to get behind the pass catchers. All right, so we had the game last night. That was the first of 13 this week. We'll go to that Kyle Pitts Atlanta Falcons team. The Los Angeles Chargers going to Atlanta to play the Falcons.
Is this when you go dun 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 dun
dun
dun
dun always going on in my head. That's how I live my life. For the Chargers, it's going to be very bleak at wide receiver, but Josh Palmer has a lot of interesting upside this week. He's going to be the wide receiver one for this team. We'll see what Atlanta's defense. They do have some good corners at times, but we'll see how that goes. Justin Herbert's going to be in your starting lineup, as well as Austin Eckler and Gerald Everett should be in your lineup this week. If you are one of those guys who lost a tight end to the bye, and you can get Gerald Everett, he is the guy to go after. For Atlanta, keep an eye on Cordero Patterson. He does have his window open to return. He is back at practice. If he is good to go, they're going to put him in the lineup, and he's going to instantly become that number one running back once again. Might not get 100% of the workload, but should be enough to be impactful for your team. If you've held him through the injury, you want him back in your lineup. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, definitely Kyle Pitts probably in your lineup, especially this week with the 6 teams on bye. He should still be a top 10, 12 level tight end, which is not saying a whole lot. And Drake London on the outside is interesting as well. The Falcons are 4-4. The Chargers off the bye 4-3. Big game for both teams. Atlanta trying to be the only team in that division above 500. If they lose, every team in the division will officially be below 500, no matter what else happens this week. Who do you got?
Yeah, this is kind of a bit of a toss-up game, but yeah, because I know the Chargers are definitely dealing with some injuries, but I still think if they can have chemistry between Justin Herbert and Joshua Palmer, and everything is all about Joshua Palmer hype. And the key thing is that the Falcons have really been getting pummeled by opposing wide receivers, allowing more than 45.9 more PPR fantasy points to the position than any other defense over the past 3 weeks alone. Falcons definitely have had injuries on the defense, and it's one of those games that I think it's a close one. It could come down to maybe a 6 point differential, but uh, I know as much uncertainty as you have in the Chargers, I think you have even more uncertainty over the Falcons. So while I wouldn't be surprised to see an upset by the Falcons in the game, I've got to go with the chalk and go with the Chargers.
Yeah, the Chargers coming off the bye, even though they're going to be short staffed, I think they'll be able to get it done. We saw the Texans work pretty well with a limited wide receiver core last night against a better defense in the Eagles. I think the Chargers with Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler and Gerald Everett and Josh Palmer will be able to find enough pieces to get the ball moving. That Atlanta defense is still atrocious. They still do blow some big leads. They should have lost last week. I think the Chargers have a lot more to play for. They have a much better quarterback than Marcus Mariota, and I think that gets the job done. All right, next up, it's the Dolphins going to Chicago to play the Chicago Bears. Tua has to be at least considered, if not a start in most lineups nowadays. Raheem Mostert, interesting. I don't know if he's going to be a starter, probably in that flex consideration at least. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, smash plays. Do not second guess it. Put them in your lineup. And Mike Gesicki's had a nice little resurgence the last couple of weeks. Chicago not great against the tight ends. For the Bears, Justin Fields has been playable the last 3 weeks. Definitely playable in Superflex, but redraft depends on your league format and how many, what's available on the wire. He could be your best option. I don't know what to do about David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. They've been splitting times. Both have been decent to good, but neither one of them has been great. So if you have Montgomery, he's probably going to stay in your lineup. If you have Herbert, it's going to really depend on your other options, but both are really the same player. So Herbert, it could be a buy low candidate here. And for the Bears, they do have Chase Claypool. We'll see what that comes to this week. Probably not much. Darnell Mooney on the outside, not interesting, or neither is Cole Kmet. So Bears 3-5, Dolphins 5-3. Dolphins offense looking really good. Defensive boost this week with Bradley Chubb. Who gets the win?
Because one of the definite questions in this game will be as what will Justin Fields do, as he has been a top 12 fantasy quarterback, and with Chase Claypool, everyone wondering what he will morph into this week. Now, I don't think Chase Claypool's really going to have that much effect on this game. He just was traded. He's just learning everything. He's just trying to get chemistry with the other players. And I just tend to think when it comes to both offenses, the Dolphins have the better offenses of the two. Plus, as you just mentioned, they boosted their defense with some extra firepower. So I know the Bears, by and large, have been more decent in recent times. Most notably, they ended up having the surprise win on Monday Night Football, and I don't think any of us saw it coming. But yeah, it's just hard choosing them in this case, as the Dolphins look legit, and I got to go with the fish.
Yeah, Tua is 5-0 in games he's completed this year. They've won, I think, 12 of their last 13 with him in the lineup, finishing the game. Chicago, their offense seems to be getting better, but that defense has some holes. Remember, they did trade away two major defensive pieces this last week. So I think that Bears defense is going to take a huge step back, and they gave up a ton of points to the Cowboys last week. I'm going to take the Dolphins to win this one. I expect big games from Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as usual, which means Tua is going to have a good day. This defense just needs to shut down the Bears for a half, and they're going to do it. That's what they did against the Lions. They can do it again this week in Chicago. All right, next up, it's Carolina and Cincinnati. For the Panthers, probably not on the radar is PJ Walker, but he has been interesting the last couple of weeks to watch. Deontay Foreman's going to be in your lineup. DJ Moore suddenly re-emerging as a threat. That is the end of the list for Carolina. For the Bengals, Joe Burrow, Joe Mixon, they're almost locked plays, even though they were disappointing last week. T. Higgins is in your lineup as well, along with Tyler Boyd, at least in that flex consideration. Hayden Hurts has some tight end appeal. Remember, no Jamar Chase, so the passing targets are going to have to go somewhere. The Bengals looked awful on Halloween against the Browns, and
Definitely a trick.
Yeah, it looked like they didn't know what to do with that Jamar Chase. Now, maybe an extra week of practice. That injury kind of broke midweek, that he was going to be missing a lot of time. I think it was assumed that he had that hip injury the week before. He played through it. He's just having a day of rest. And all of a sudden, it went downhill pretty quick where he's not on IR, but he's going to be out at least this week. By next week, we'll see what happens in week number 11. Carolina, though, showed a lot of fight their last two games without Christian McCaffrey. Looks like a team that's trying to make something out of nothing, essentially. So who gets the win?
Yeah, this is a definitely one would be tempted, maybe ATS to go with the Panthers, but straight up, it's just hard because their major offensive weapon definitely going to be DJ Moore, as Foreman ended up playing 68% of the snaps last week, and but beyond those two, it's just not much there. And with the Bengals, the big question with them is short week following a very stunning loss to the Browns. That was just like you're going slack jaw, and you're like, WTF is going on? Uh, can Mixon bounce back after being bottled up? And can Higgins and Boyd both step up? Most important stat in the absence of Jamar Chase, because I said it last podcast, that is going to be the ongoing question for the Bengals. If they can figure out the enigma this week against the Panthers, it will make it easier going forward. I think somehow they do. Panthers are Panthers can put up the fight, but they're still a god awful team. So I got to go with the Bengals, because just the Bengals, by and large, have their questions, have their problems, definitely have their issues, but they're the better of the two teams.
Yeah, the Bengals also have a lot more to play for. Baltimore with a winnable game this week in New Orleans on Monday night. If the Bengals lose, they could start running away with this division. Baltimore could. So I think Cincinnati has to win to keep pace. Carolina, like you said, they've looked better in the last couple of weeks, but still a very bad team overall. I think Tampa Bay, we're agreeing right now, is not a great team, not an even good
Uh,
team. And Atlanta, even though they're winning the division, is not a team you go, wow, that's a solid team. We both picked against them already in this podcast. So I agree with you. Cincinnati is the better team. They're going to get the win here at home against Carolina. I think the magic touch and the magic dead cat bounce of no Baker Mayfield, no Matt Rule, no Christian McCaffrey, where everybody rallies together, starts to fade off this week, and we move on. This one's interesting. Green Bay at Detroit. This normally is a no-brainer. You go Green Bay because Green Bay's always been the better team, but Green Bay hasn't been good this year. Now, Detroit's defense is atrocious. So, for the first time in a very long time, I think Aaron Rodgers is a very good fantasy play. He's a very good daily fantasy play. Romeo Dubs, if Alan Lazard misses, could be a very good stack candidate. In fact, I think I've got that stack in the 16-teamer. I've got it in a daily lineup as well. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon both have potential to go off here. Robert Tonyan, whoever plays for the Packers on that offensive side, has at least the potential to have their best week all season. You saw what the Dolphins did last week, where Gesicki got right. Waddle and Hill both went off. Tua had his second best game of the season, other than the Baltimore game. The issue here is we've seen Green Bay go up against not great defenses and not put up points. For Detroit, they have an offense that can score against pretty
Commanders,
much.
cough.
Yeah. Detroit has an offense that can put up points against good defenses for the most part. Yeah, no TJ Hawkinson because of the trade. Yeah, no Josh Reynolds. Probably even DeAndre Swift, not 100%. But Jamal Williams has been good in release of DeAndre Swift. Amon-Ra St. Brown's been great. And Khalif Raymond the last couple of weeks has been fantasy viable. If you are in a deeper dynasty league like I am, I've had to play him the last week or two, and he has been very, very beneficial to the lineup. This one could get interesting. It's in Detroit. Who gets this one?
Yeah, because like you say, normally it's a slam dunk, but the Packers have just not been themselves and have had some god awful stinker games. But that being said, on the side of the Detroit Lions, with DJ Chark on injured reserve and St. Brown on at full health, you have the three wide set pretty much now is St. Brown, Reynolds, and Raymond. No TJ Hawkinson, as you mentioned, of course, sent away in the trade. But you look at these two teams, and I tend to think that hopefully you have a better tandem with Jones at RB3 and Dillon at RB26 this week, and they should feast on the Lions. That doesn't always necessarily mean that would happen because we've seen a whole bunch of should games that you're just like going, blah, 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 happened here. As yeah, but they should feast on the Lions with some help with whoever the heck they can manage to plug in as wide receivers. As I tend to have more confidence in the Packers here.
Yeah, I have a little more confidence in Green Bay, but for the first time in a very long time against Detroit, I'm not confident enough to feel like this is an easy win for Green Bay. I will say this: I have Green Bay winning. I do think between Aaron Jones, Romeo Dubs, Aaron Rodgers, I, I, I just, I know somebody's going to explode, and there's going to be somebody who disappoints. Um,
You would hate to pick Green Bay in a Survivor. Yeah.
yeah, this is a game you avoid in the Survivor pool.
Woohoo.
Even though it's been tough in the Survivor pool overall. All that being said, I'm going to take Green Bay as well. Next up, it's Las Vegas and Jacksonville, two-win teams on the season. Jacksonville, I think, is the better of the two, but you can't really tell. For the Raiders, Josh Jacobs, Devontae Adams in your lineup. Darren Waller, if he plays, is a very risky play because you don't know how the hamstring health actually is. That's a very easy injury to re-aggravate. Derek Carr got pulled last week, so he's probably going to have a good bounce back game. He tends to follow his true stinkers with some pretty good ones. Jacksonville's defense, though, can be sneaky. For the Jaguars, Trevor Lawrence, interesting streaming candidate. Travis Etienne is a must start at this point. I believe he is the heart and soul of that offense. And then you've got your Zay Jones, Christian Kirk options on the outside, and Evan Ingram, who has been not great, but a good enough tight end to be in your starting lineup. And yeah, this one's this is a tough one. This is a true toss up to me. Who gets it done?
I'm picking the Raiders because if they can't beat the Jags, they need to go to another league. Seriously, Raiders.
Um, I, I'm gonna take the Jaguars because I don't know why. I feel like this is the week Jacksonville's defense shows up and at least shuts down the Raiders enough. All of that being said, this could be very easily going either way. We saw Las Vegas play really poorly a few times against bad teams and lose. So I'm going to take the chance on Jacksonville. I don't love it, but I do think they can ground and pound this game with Travis Etienne and at least get this one to be close in the end.
So you don't like it, you don't love it, and you don't want some more of it.
No. Next up, it is the Colts going to New England. Of course, no Jonathan Taylor.
Wah,
Um,
wah.
Yeah, it's tough with no Jonathan Taylor. It will be Deion Jackson. Philip Lindsay might get some work as well. Sam Ellinger is not a startable option.
Yep.
Michael Pittman and Deion Jackson might be your start end of the list here. Indianapolis has too many tight ends to really pick on one. And the Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson might be beginning and end of list there. Damian Harris looks to be an afterthought and is coming off an illness, so very likely not to play. And yeah, this is not a fantasy gold mine unless you're looking at defense and kickers, and we don't really talk about either of those here. So on the field, both teams need a win very bad. Who gets it done?
Oh yeah, just Jonathan Taylor didn't practice again. Let's see all the memes about him. And key thing here, definitely Mac Jones is QB22. But I know the Colts can surprise, but I tend to think New England has more going for them with the Stevenson Harris than Deion Jackson and recent acquisition Zach Moss. Plus the Pats are home, so I think they can get a dub here, especially without Taylor not playing. The Pats have the better ground attack easily, bar none. I know the Pats have had some surprising losses, but I don't think they're going to drop one at home, and especially when the Colts don't have Jonathan Taylor, unless you have something really crazy fluky happen.
Yeah, backup quarterback starting for the Colts. Good Patriots defense. No Jonathan Taylor. It does not look like a good recipe for the Colts this week. I'm on the Patriots as well. That would bring this entire division above 500, which is pretty impressive halfway through the season. Buffalo and the New York Jets 6-1 versus 5-3. Jets get the home field, but Buffalo looks like just an absolute steamroller of a football team. Josh Allen in your lineup along with Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. Dawson Knox at least in tight end consideration, and Singletary in flex RB2 consideration this week with all of the bye weeks, though the Jets have a good defense. For the Jets, Michael Carter and Garrett Wilson, I think, are your beginning and end. Maybe Tyler Conklin on the tight end front, but not the best situation for the Jets without Brees Hall. It seems like that team has regressed a little bit without him. Only been one game, so we'll see if they can rebound. The Bills, tough matchup for the best of teams in good health. The Jets are neither of those, in my opinion.
Yeah, as you have the Jets continue to feel the loss of a major injury loss, I think the Bills might be giving their new running back Hines a few snaps, but I still think it's going to be the Josh Allen show, stealing a dub from the reeling Jets at home.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bills as well. The Bills are just too good, frankly. They looked disappointing against the Packers last week. I think they're going to turn it up against the division rival Jets and just dominate this game. And we move on. Minnesota going to Washington, the Kirk Cousins revenge game. For the Vikings, I think Kirk Cousins is a good play this week, along with Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen, at least in consideration. TJ Hawkinson, little bit of risk here because he is only a few days into the system, but a tight end. Probably a very simple route tree, and he's probably going to be used mostly in that passing game, at least this week. For the Commanders, Antonio Gibson is interesting because J.D. McKissick is out. He's been getting the passing game work, and it's also led to a couple of touchdowns the last couple of weeks. Brian Robinson has not been getting the job done. Antonio Gibson is interesting. Probably not someone you want to start. Terry McLaurin is likely the best option for the Commanders at any position and might be the only real startable asset in this game. Minnesota 6-1, looking to further get ahead in this division if they can. It would take a Detroit win to do so, but stranger things have happened. So Minnesota needs a win. Washington 4-4, trying to climb back into this playoff race. Who gets it done?
As while the Commanders definitely have been punching beyond their weight class and say no press or sitch for Mister You like that, so expect lots of Dalvin Cook, and I think we will see how new guy Hawkinson slips into his new team. I bet the Commanders play hard, so it's an ATS pick is ideal here, but I'm still picking out the Vikings to edge the turds.
Yeah, I'm going to say the Vikings get it done too. They've been one of the best teams in football this year. They've got too many weapons. You can throw the ball all over the Commanders, and they've got an offense that's ready to go. I don't see a way for Washington to win this. Hopefully, they can stay in it for fantasy output going out through the entire game, but I'm going to take the Vikings as well. And we move on. Seattle goes to Arizona to play the Cardinals for the Seahawks. Kenneth Walker, he will be a starter the rest of the way as he is just that good. DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett as well. Geno Smith is a streaming option for the Cardinals. DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray will be starting along with Zach Ertz in most lineups. And then in the backfield, wait and see what happens with James Conner. If he doesn't play, Eno Benjamin is a good option. Seattle's defense, though, has been much better in the last few weeks, so tread carefully. Last time they played Arizona, Seattle's defense got 20 points. This is a big game for both teams. Seattle looking to maintain or extend with San Francisco on the bye, the lead in the division. Arizona 3-5. They win this game. They can be within a game of first place. Even after that disappointing start, no DeAndre Hopkins, they could still be right there. So who gets it done?
Oh, this one is kind of a bit of a toss up, but talking about off the field stuff, since Modern Warfare wasn't just released, I'm picking the cards because the Hawks have to come back down to earth sometimes. See Giants last week, just sort of as a field of probabilities. So I know Geno Smith is always a good start. I know I'm definitely starting him in at least one league, but I just tend to think the Cards can somehow bounce back and the Seahawks come down back to earth. It's they're going to the Cardinals. It's just time for that to happen.
I don't think that happens. I think this is a much higher scoring game than the 19-9 affair they had a few weeks back, but I think Seattle gets the win here. I think this defense is becoming more and more confident by the week. Kenneth Walker looks like one of the best running backs in football, not just rookies. I mean, you have Brees Hall, you have Damian Pierce, who have all looked fantastic. Brees before the injury looked like a game changer. And then Kenneth Walker comes on after the Penny injury and looks almost, if not just as good as both of those players. So I think Seattle's going to get the ground game going. I do think Buda Baker misses a game, which is a big impact for that Arizona defense. So I'm going to take Seattle. Hopefully a higher scoring game than last time. I expect it to be somewhere in the 30 to 25 type of range. Arizona also doesn't win a lot of games at home for whatever reason. So I'm going to take Seattle. 6-3. They would be a game and a half, 2 games up on the Niners in the win column. And they're going to need it because San Francisco is going to be coming with Christian McCaffrey in the fold. So Seattle needs to get this win. Next up, it is the Disappointment Bowl. The last 2 Super Bowl winning teams, both not very good. The Rams 3-3, the Bucks 3-5. 3-4 for the Rams. Still very bad. And 3-5 for Tampa Bay. I think the loser of this one is they're probably done. I mean, the Bucks have a weak division, and in theory, so the Rams, but with Seattle so many games in front of them already, and San Francisco loading up, this could be an elimination game in early November. For the Rams, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, maybe Allen Robinson. I don't know if you can trust Stafford. I don't know if you can trust Brady in this game. So quarterback, if you had to pick one, I'd say Stafford because that Tampa defense, that secondary is still very beat up. You ignore the running game for,
especially with the recent Shaq Barrett injury.
Yeah, I almost think you ignore the running backs on both sides. Leonard Fournette is interesting as a flex option, but the Rams defense is not terrible against the run. The Bucks defense is fantastic against the runs. The Rams can't do it anyways. Godwin and Evans, you got to play them. I don't think either one of them is going to pop off at the same time. But that being said, Tampa's going to have to throw the ball in this game because they haven't gotten the running game going. Both teams are going to be throwing the ball like crazy. Who gets the win here?
Yeah, I think it's a very close game, very sloppy game, very ugly game. Brady needs to get his head straight. Evans needs to hold onto the freaking ball. Godwin needs to get involved big time. You're not going to have Brady again, nor Gage. And please, no stupid false start penalties late to cancel out the game-winning touchdown, Mr. Fournette. Please and thank you. I think if the Bucks can take this one, if they don't Plexico Burress themselves too much, it's not going to be a pretty win, but a dub is a dub, and I I can't really have anything tangible to put on the Bucks, but I just tend to think it's a home game. They're looking to get some kind of redemption after the Ravens plucked that one away from them. That they want to win. They want to win at home. They want to redeem themselves. I think it's also the Bruce Arians Ring of Honor one. So that one would definitely suck to lose. So I I don't have a lot of confidence in the Bucks. This would not be one of my biggest confidence picks, but I'm just going with a home team, and they really need a win, and they need a win bad.
Yeah, they do need a win, but all of that being said, I'm taking the Rams. The Rams have had the Bucks numbered in the last few years. I do think they're going to struggle to get anything going on the ground that's going to limit the passing game. That offensive line has not stopped the pass rush. And oh, by the way, Aaron Donald's still a thing. You mentioned confidence pool. I've got the Rams in mine as the third lowest confidence game of the week. And I think the other two are just straight up upsets. So with that being said, I'm going to take the Rams. I agree it's going to be an ugly game. I agree it's going to be not a pretty win for whoever gets it. But if Tampa Bay loses this game and Atlanta loses, they're still only a game out of first place. So I guess you got that, Bucks fans. But I'm going to take the Rams this week. And we go to the Sunday Nighter. Tennessee goes to Kansas City. This is a much better game if Ryan Tannehill plays. It's right now with Kansas City as a 12-point favorite. I think a lot of that is Malik Willis, not Ryan Tannehill. Derrick Henry did come back to practice day, should get a plenty big workload. Kansas City has bad run defense. They're going to ride Derrick Henry all night long as best they can. We'll see if it's enough. But outside of Derrick Henry, I think you ignore the Tennessee Titans' weapons and you go to the Kansas City side of the ball, where Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce, of course, in your lineup, coming off that bye week. We'll see what Kadarius Toney brings. I don't think he's fantasy playable this week. We'll see about Hardman, who had the 3-touchdown game. Juju, MVS. There's some options there if you need one. They're probably going to be decent, if not good. And then we'll see the split between Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I really need one of those two to get injured, so it's a clear-cut role for the survivor. But right now, Clyde has the touchdown upside, whereas Pacheco might get more work. So the Chiefs and Titans both 5-2, so a big game in the standings. This is going to determine some fantasy football weeks for sure, with Derrick Henry, Pat Mahomes, and Travis Kelce being all early picks. Who gets the win?
It's very hard picking against Pat at Arrowhead. I know he hasn't been perfect, and they definitely have been mortal and have had some oopsie games, but I still think Tennessee is in for a long night, and this game can be very disappointing for anyone who has shares of Henry, Woods. I mean, Henry may do well just in PPR, but if the Chiefs keep him out of the end zone or minimize his trips into the end zone, I still tend to think. I know the Titans have been doing generally a little bit better, but I think this is going to be a big bump in the road, and you got to go with the Chiefs, especially prime time, especially in Arrowhead.
Yeah, the Titans have only lost to the Bills and the Giants, two teams with 6 wins on the season. So the Titans have a good team, but if it's Malik Willis, the Titans don't have a shot. They just don't. They can't throw the ball. You make a team one-dimensional against a great coaching staff like the Kansas City Chiefs have and Andy Reid and company. You're going to find a way, even if it is Derrick Henry, even if you don't have great run stoppers, you're going to find a way to eventually stop it. Tennessee also has a very soft secondary. They give up a lot of big plays. Pat Mahomes can, of course, engineer big plays. So I'm going to take Kansas City. I'm hoping this game is more competitive than that 12-point favorite for Kansas City implies it will be. But if Tannehill plays, this becomes an interesting game. He is officially questionable. As a quarterback, you can kind of get away with a bad ankle for a little while. You're probably not going to run. But Malik Willis, I just think, is not ready for this level of competition and to have that much pressure put on him to run the offense. So with that being said, it's going to be Kansas City, and what I'm hoping is a close. I hope it's like last night, where it's surprisingly close for a while, and then maybe it opens up late where those fantasy points keep flowing in. Then we go to Monday night, Baltimore at New Orleans. Lamar Jackson in your lineup, but it's tough behind that. It could be Kenyon Drake. It looks like it'll be Kenyon Drake, possibly some Gus Edwards in this one. Maybe avoid that situation altogether. No Rashad Bateman out for the season. Devin Duvernay is in play. Demarcus Robinson with a groin injury now. Deshaun Jackson coming back. I mean, it's not a great situation for the Ravens at the receiving core. And oh, by the way, Mark Andrews did not practice for the second consecutive day with the knee and the shoulder. If you can go get Isaiah Likely and you have Mark Andrews, you have that security blanket that he will be able to play, and he might be a very, very good option. But it's a definite injury versus injury game with Baltimore, who got whacked last year on injuries, really hurting once again, and New Orleans, who's hurting again this year. No Marshawn Lattimore expected, as far as I know. Jarvis Landry back at practice. No Michael Thomas. So Alvin Kamara definitely in your lineup after the explosion last week.
Isn't
Chris
Michael Thomas
Olave
done for the year?
it's going to be, he might come back for like late season after the fantasy season and maybe into the playoffs, but he's going for surgery. That's going to be a tough turnaround, and he is made of glass and paper from what I understand from the last few years. So I don't expect to see Michael Thomas again this year. Jawan Johnson at tight end or Taysom Hill are possible, but I don't really love either of those options. New Orleans has a chance to tie for the division lead with a win and an Atlanta loss, or they could just fall back into mediocrity again. Baltimore 5-3, a big win here in a Cincinnati loss. They're suddenly finding themselves 2 games up in the division going into their bye week, and that's a good place for Baltimore. So a lot to play for both teams. Who gets the win on Monday Night Football?
I think the Ravens do it again, and they steal a dub once again in somebody else's home that they did previously on Thursday Night Football to my Bucks. I think they do it again to the New Orleans Saints. It's a close one. sort of have a feeling let's buy a field goal or a 2-point conversion, like a call it a 25-23 ugly win from the Ravens as they take the second NFC South win in 7 days' time, touring through kicking the Bucks in the posterior and doing it once again in the Big Easy.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Ravens as well. I do think Lamar Jackson's going to have to run the ball a lot in this game, and that's going to be the big difference here. I'm going to take the Ravens. I think likely will get some extra play. I think Mark Andrews is going to tough it out and play, though. If you do not have Isaiah Likely and you have another option playing Sunday, you might have to just go with it and hope Mark Andrews doesn't play. But still a day or so. Ravens' final practice is actually tomorrow, so you get some information on Mark Andrews hopefully tomorrow, in or out. Or if it's a true game time decision, I think you either go get Isaiah Likely or you pivot to someone playing on Sunday like Gerald Everett, like Tyler Conklin. Maybe take a shot on Noah Fant
Like
or something over
like
that way.
like friends, pivot.
Pivot. Yes. Yeah, terrible show, but I know the reference. With that being said, yeah, I know I said it. Nobody likes that opinion, but I'm just gonna say it anyways because it's the truth. Anyways, with that being
We
said,
we
Joel, it is
we all have that theme song stuck in our head playing endlessly.
yeah. All right. Well, before we go on a tangent about terrible TV shows, Joel, final thought on to you.
My final thought definitely finally a normal result after the Bears win and a Browns win on the last two Monday night primetime upsets. The Eagles finally on Thursday night football resume normality by stopping the Texans after being tied 14 at the half. With how weak the Eagles' schedule is, time to get ready for a non-stop 17-0 hype until either the Eagles do it or they finally lose. So just prepare yourself. It's been building like a tropical system in the Gulf. It's been building, and now we're just going to hear about it non freaking stop for the entire rest of the season until they lose. And that's the only reason why I think the Eagles want them just to lose, just even if it's one game, so the media shuts up and we don't hear 17 and 0, 17 and 0, 17 and 0, just because it's locked and loaded. It's being brought to bear for endless distribution.
Yeah, next, well, let's go through the rest of the season for the Eagles. They have a game against the Commanders next week, who has been playing a lot better on Monday Night Football. They've been playing a lot better. Maybe they can put a scare into the Eagles. Then you've got the Colts, not a lot of confidence there. But then the tougher stretch I was talking about, Packers, Sunday Night Football. Maybe they get something figured out by then. Then you've got the Titans, a team that you saw Dameon Pierce just ran all over this team. Derrick Henry against this Eagles defense could be dangerous. That I think is when they finally drop their first game. But then they've got the Giants who have been playing very well, the Bears who've been sneaky dangerous. Then you've got the Cowboys on Christmas Eve with Dak Prescott back. That should be a much better or much more difficult game for the Eagles. Then they wrap up with the Saints on New Year's Day and the Giants to close out the season. So I don't see a 17-0. They're going to stub their toe at some point, and if not, they're going to get into the NFC playoffs. They're going to play a team like Minnesota. They're going to play a team like Dallas. They're going to play a team like San Francisco or Seattle that's just going to have the better day. Don't worry about the undefeated season, Philadelphia. You're probably not getting that no matter what. I think you're probably better off getting a loss and getting that taste of what you don't want to deal with in the postseason before that happens. For me, we're going to talk about a little bit of perspective in fantasy football. I'm in a dynasty league. I am struggling with injuries. I've got Mike Williams out. I've got Jonathan Taylor out. I've got Darren Waller questionable. I've got Demarcus Robinson questionable. I've got people on bye like
Is this
Najee
when
Harris.
do the Joe Namath soundbite struggling?
Struggling. Yeah. It's a rough team right now because of all the injuries. Now, given it's a 500 team, it is actually this 8-8 right here, sixth place right now in the playoff picture. Right now, the sixth seed. But it's got Josh Allen, Derrick Henry, Joe Mixon, Mike Evans, Tyler Lockett, Adam Thielen, Darren Waller, Justin Herbert. It's got some good pieces. Superflex, so you can play both Allen and Herbert. And I'm trying to find a way to get a piece, nothing spectacular. My target has been Josh Palmer because we mentioned no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams, possibly no DeAndre Carter. He's going to have a good role, but he is still the team's number 3 wide receiver. Keenan Allen, in theory, going to come back. Mike Williams, in theory, going to come back at some point. So
Even Austin Eckler is in question.
yeah, I mean, he's going to play, but who knows? Anything can flare up. So I'm looking at a team that, I don't know, maybe needs somebody. Someone reached out to try and get Mariota. So I go to them and go, what do you really need or what do I want from your roster? They had Josh Palmer. I go, okay, let me send you Mariota. Goes back and forth. He sends a ridiculous offer. I say, no, that's too much. But I go and look at the guy's roster. It's a super flex dynasty league. There are 12 teams. I have 4 quarterbacks on my roster. I have one of the smallest quarterback cores. There is one with 2. There's one with 3. There's a few with 4. And then you've got a couple that got maybe some depth guys. But my 4, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota, I can play, when healthy, all 4 of those as a starting piece. I go to this team that I'm looking to trade with, to trade Marcus Mariota, who is right now the quarterback 8 on the season in the scoring format, by the way. And look at this guy's quarterback situation, and he has by far the most quarterbacks in the league. He has a total of 10 quarterbacks, and you might be thinking, well, he's got 10 quarterbacks. Are any of them good? Well, I'll let you decide that one. As we go, I'm going to try and do this based on what I would assume is a depth chart. Again, super flex, so you get 2 starters. So I'm going to say quarterback number 1 is Andy Dalton of the New Orleans Saints.
If we had sound effects, we would definitely be playing yakety sax right now.
Oh, I could play it. I could play it from my phone. I have that on loop somewhere. But anyways, the quarterback 1, I'm saying is Andy Dalton. He also has Jameis Winston. So let's say Saints starting quarterback is his quarterback 1. His number 2 is Jacoby Brissett. His number 2 is not a starter in 3 weeks. So Deshaun Watson is coming back, and they said when he's reinstated 1 month from today, by the way, he will play his first game for the Cleveland Browns. So yeah, Dalton, Brissett, let's say Jameis Winston's the number 3 because, well, he's starter. If he plays, he's a startable quarterback. Number 4, Bailey Zappi. Number 5, Desmond Ridder. Number 6, Brian Hoyer. Number 7, Tyler Huntley. Number 8, backup quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Blaine Gabbert. Number 9, the aforementioned Malik Willis, who can't throw the ball. He looks real bad. He was a project coming out of college for a reason. And then number 10, the coup de grace, the 3rd string quarterback for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Kyle Trask. And the dude wants me to give draft picks Marcus Mariota for Josh Palmer, who is a number 3 wide receiver on his team. And a running back 2 in Damian Harris. And I tell him, dude, you are smoking the ganja.
May I toss out a Joe Mora soundbite?
Yes.
You think you know, but you don't know, and you never will.
Yeah. It's, yeah. I mean, I told the guy, he'd be your best quarterback far and away, and you want me to give you draft picks to get a backup and a 3rd string wide receiver? He goes, yeah, it's a 1-year rental, plus my team still sucks with or without him. I can't argue. His team is right now. Let's go to the standings. Scrolling way down at the bottom of last place. So, hey, for what it's worth, this is a guy who was hyper aggressive and traded all his current assets for future assets and future assets for more current assets, and it has not worked out. My team has been ravaged by injury, and I'm still somehow a playoff team with a lot of upside. Hopefully, maybe Jonathan Taylor comes back and isn't freaking hurt the rest of the season. Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris can get something going. My wide receiver core, maybe Mike Williams comes back, and I'm a little healthier. Darren Waller, please show up. It would be great. And this team can make a little bit of a run. So I might have to take my lumps this week. I am playing a softer matchup this week, so maybe I can still get an easy double win because this is one where you play the league meeting. That's why it's 8-8, not 4-4. If I can get to 10-8 next week, not an easy matchup, but we'll see. And then just got to stay in it with that team. Maybe it gets healthy, it can make a run. But don't make dumb trade offers that have no logic. And when called out, just go, he's a rental. Yeah, Josh Palmer's a 2-game rental. Damian Harris is done. Like, no.
I can vouch for Damian Harris not being very productive in fantasy.
Yeah, all because I wanted in a super flex league a 3rd string wide receiver and a 2nd-round draft pick.
The game script is clearly Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah. Yeah, Ramondre Stevenson has the job full time. So, anyways, that is our time. Um, Fantasy football is fun. Yeah, I am flying Ryan Gokers along with, as always.
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verone going, please, defense on my 13, score more than -1 points this time. Please, and thank you. I think I started Seattle as opposed to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh got summarily their ass dropped.
I'm telling my 16 teamer, please somehow just don't lose a game, even though you're bad and you don't score points. I don't know how I'm 6-2, 15th in scoring. That makes no sense. I've had multiple people in that league be like, dude, your team is trash. I'm like, I know. And it's 6-2, and I don't get it. But yeah, it's tough. But hey, I still have the trophy right over, right over
Fantasy football is one of
here.
the few hobbies where you're mentally smacking your head up against the wall on a daily basis, and you're like, yeah, I like this. This is fun. Let me smack my head up against the wall again.
Yeah. But 6 teams on bye and injuries kind of takes the joy out of things a little bit. So
Uh,
everybody relax. This is probably the worst week for buys and injuries as far as the season is going to go. So
once we get done with all the stupid dumb London games.
hey, we're done with the London games. We
Oh,
just
we
have
are?
the
Yeah.
Germany game. We just have
Oh,
the
okay.
Germany game, Bucks Seattle, and that is next weekend. Actually, Bucks in Seattle going to Germany. So we'll see how that one goes. But with that, that's our picks for this week. Hopefully, I'll get a few more games back on Joel down by 5. I seem to always be about 5 games behind Joel in these damn pick'em things after a while. So, and what happens is I start to crawl back into it, and then I make some dumb picks, and I fall back 5 games, and I got to get desperate, and it just goes badly. So, hopefully, we crawl back a little bit closer to Joel this week and get within shouting distance. We have a few games we disagree on: Jacksonville, Vegas, Arizona, Seattle, and Los Angeles, Tampa Bay. So, if I get all 3, maybe we're within 2.